Hey, it's Greg Stanley. If you're listening to this podcast, you know I love everything automotive. This passion has expanded to include being a car specialist consultant for RM Sotheby's. So if you need assistance buying or consigning a collector car at any one of our online or live auctions, including Scottsdale, Amelia Island, or Monterey, you can reach one of our car specialists at rmsotheby's.com, or you can email me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com.
This is the Collector Car Podcast, the home for the auto enthusiast. Join Greg Stanley as he applies over 25 years of insights and analytical experience to the collector car market. He will interview the experts and throw in some fun stuff as well.
Hey, auto enthusiasts, it's Greg Stanley. A few updates before we get to our Scottsdale review. A lot of exciting things are happening here. I guess the biggest announcement is I will start live streaming these podcast episodes soon. It probably won't be every episode, but you can follow me on Instagram and on Facebook to see when these live streaming events will occur. I'm planning on the very first one to occur this coming Monday, the 18th, probably around 5 p.m. or so, where I will cover Shelby market trends, and I will have a lot of cool graphs and data that you can visually see as I talk about it. Now, this will be unedited because it is live, and you will be able to comment and ask questions during the podcast, which I will address, and then I will post an audio-only edited version for the normal Thursday podcast. So if you missed a live streaming event, you can listen to the podcast on Thursday, and then you can go back to the YouTube channel to watch any of the information that you would like to see. Now, what's really exciting about this is I'm going to get some more folks involved in unique and fun ways. So starting on January the 24th, the goal is to have a live streaming event that night to kick off the Collector Car Fantasy Football League. Now, this is something new and fun. It's basically fantasy football, but instead of a team, you have a collection, and instead of athletes, you have cars. So I have some fun folks from Hagerty that are participating, as well as RM Sotheby's. So you will see us discuss these cars and why we picked them and how we think they will appreciate over time. And that should be a lot of fun. And then also in February, we will have McKeel Hagerty's Ultimate Garage episode. And then in March, we will have Wayne Carini's Ultimate Garage, both live streaming events. And then I also have a new series I'm going to start called Cars on the Rise, where I will pick out cars that I think will appreciate in the future based on the trends I see out there in the marketplace. So that will be something fun and new for all of you to hear. If you have any additional ideas or suggestions, feel free to shoot me a note at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. And now off to Scottsdale. Well, I'd like to welcome Barney Ruprecht. Barney, how you doing today?
Fine, thanks. Yourself?
Fine, I'm doing really well. Now, Barney is one of our first repeating guests on the Collector Car Podcast, so I appreciate you jumping on the phone with us. I know we have Scottsdale coming up here real soon, and I kind of wanted to get an overview of some of the cool cars that not only that you've consigned for the auction, but just some other ones that maybe caught your eye that are coming up in Scottsdale. So why don't you give us an overview of some of the cool cars you're seeing that are showing up in Arizona?
Yeah, happy to be here. Hunter, I'm one of the first repeating guests. Thank you. Arizona is always the kickoff to the annual auction season, I'll call it, and it never disappoints. And this year is very much the same. We've got a wide-ranging group of cars consigned with things like the homologation collection of 80s and 90s, homologation specials, ranging to some pre-war classics all the way to the latest and greatest supercar and hypercars with Koenigsegg, Ford GT, McLaren Senna, things of that nature. And, of course, your, tried and tested post-war sports cars in Jaguar D-Type.
Right, yeah. I was looking at the offerings, and it's really kind of insane because I think of supercars, all the cars you just kind of rattled off there, but we go back decades in offerings. I mean, there's a 1937 Bugatti Type 57 SC, which, the argument can be made that was one of the first supercars back in the 30s. And then, like you said, we have the D-Type a couple decades later. We even have 60s muscle, 1965 GT3, I want to call it a supercar, but GT350 Shelby Mustang, which I've always loved. So, yeah, if you would, could you talk a little bit about the homologation cars? I know that's really catching a lot of our next generation audience, catching their eyes. Just kind of touch on those a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. As you say, it's certainly the cars of focus for the next generation and the younger collectors, and we've had tremendous interest in the collection. It's something I've been really honored to be a part of with a great group of consigners there to assemble things. I had a hand in them acquiring one or two of them, and now I get to see it through with their sale. And it's a wide-ranging group from, a Fulvia all the way to, the final, true Lancia rally car in the Delta Integrale Evo 2, and specifically what we have there is one of the Blue Lagos cars, so one of the special livery, and I'll say it's catnip for collectors, and that color is something they really chase, and, I'm buried up to my eyeballs in inquiries on it. And, we did a great film on it out in California and really got to drive everything on the track and really see why these things went head-to-head in period with the M3 Sport Evolution through the 190E Evo 2 and kind of have the ability to go back-to-back with something really special.
Right, yeah, it's very interesting because I grew up with these cars. I know you did as well, and to see them appreciate the way they have and the love for the Group B cars has been really interesting to see. And especially when you look at like the Audi Quattro and some of the Mercedes cars that, if you're lucky back in the day, you could see them on the road, and here they are coming up for sale as a collection. So that's really cool. And it's not all high dollar stuff either. I mean, the earliest one in this group is kind of the, like you mentioned before, the 1972 Lancia, and the estimate on that car is, 30 to 40 grand, but then you go up to some of the bigger Mercedes cars that go up to 200 grand. So it looks like it's a little bit for everyone, correct?
Yeah, it's a very, wide-ranging group of prices and cars, and our estimates, I think, reflect interest in that. There's tremendous pre-sale attention on all of these cars, especially the wide-body AMG. And, we tried to price things, as reflective as possible with current conditions. I think it just goes to show with the amount of interest we've had on these cars, I would not be surprised to see pretty much everything, hopefully exceed estimate. We're always looking for that extra bidder, but we've got tremendous interest in things, and, the cars are really well rounded out with great documentation throughout to prove their provenance and history. And it's just a great group of collection that, a team put together, and, honored to be a part of it.
Right, yes, it's very nice, and I always like to look at, what are the headlining cars. And interestingly enough, we've mentioned both of them so far, but you've got the Jaguar D-Type. That estimate is well over $5 million, as well as the Bugatti. The Bugatti was right about in the $5 million range. So it'll be interesting to see how buyers respond to those, because those obviously are not the next generation of collectors, so to speak, looking at the homologation cars. But they are in demand. There's still a lot of folks looking for some of that original, quote-unquote, performance cars from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So it's nice that we have those. And then we even have an older Ferrari, 1954 Ferrari 375 America Coupe, which is really cool. So there really is a little bit of everything out there for everyone. Now, if you would, do you have any knowledge or insight on like the 2019 Koenigsegg that's being offered?
I love those cars. I am generationally one of the, the people that, remembers the first Koenigsegg coming out and thinking about those cars. And it's a really interesting brand and car in that, to really, in my opinion, Pagani has done the same thing here, but, it's really one of the only modern car brands that has been successfully created in the modern era and is largely independent and have been able to compete with the legacy manufacturers. And in Koenigsegg's circumstance, I would say their engineering product and fit and finish is as good as anything out of, Germany or Italy. It's a remarkable car in terms of performance. They're incredibly rare and limited. They're very hard to get a hold of. You'll see McLaren Sennas coming up for sale if you, take a quick scan of some of the internet sites. But you really won't find that many Koenigsegg's, and they control the market very well. They're very limited supply, and they are really bought by true collectors as original owners that want to use the car. And what we have here is the first example of the Regera to appear at public auction.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've never seen one in person, so I'm excited to see it when I get out there to Arizona. And one of just 80 examples produced over 4 years. So yeah, like you said, it's very limited production run. And this one has over $200,000 worth of options. So that would be kind of neat to see that. The other one that's extremely rare and semi-new and very hard to get a hold of is the new McLaren Speedtail. And I believe that was extremely limited production as well. And if you go back to my earliest podcast days, I would say second or third one, it's the car I predicted that Jay Leno would add to his collection, and he has yet to do so. So do you know much about the McLaren Speedtail you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, it's the, spiritual successor to the F1 reimagined for modern times. Has the, traditional F1 seating layout of three people driving in the center seat with two passengers flanking on left and right. So it's a very practical car to go out to dinner in. You can take your friends and, go grocery storing and put in the footwells. It's the first one, again, to come up on the public market. They have only just started customer deliveries here in the last couple months and weeks. It'll be interesting to see what happens here in that all of them were pre-sold and they had more clients expressing interest than, number of cars built, which I believe was 106 total. So this, I believe, is going to be one of those cars that's going to sell for more than the original purchase price or MSRP. And I love the cars. I think, what they represent in terms of an engineering achievement with their top speed capabilities really is remarkable. If you look back, as you said, to some of the first supercars of Jaguar D-Type, which won Le Mans, from an engineering product, you just see the night and day between the two and how far we've come in terms of capabilities.
Right, and it's interesting. You said, we'll probably go over the original MSRP, which I would agree with. And, on my podcast, I love talking market trends and kind of identifying what is kind of going up in the market, what is kind of going down in the market. And there are a few that are in this auction that I really want to keep an eye on. And for those of you who like to follow this type of stuff, be worthwhile to tune in and check it out online to see what these bring. And I'll just call them out here quickly. I already mentioned the 1965 Shelby Gt350. Fascinating car, first car that Shelby really got his hands on from a mass production standpoint, and the Ford versus Ferrari effect. We'll see what that does. I know at Elkhart there was a Gt350 Hertz car that exceeded my expectations by a long shot. Typically, I would say those cars would normally sell in the 175 to 200 realm, and we had the estimate right on. It sold for 235, I think. And when you look at the Shelbys, the GT350s, the hierarchy, that's the first year, the first one, and then after that, I would say the rollover cars of 1966, and then after that, you get into the four-speed Hertz cars, which that was one of 80. So it will be interesting to see if this GT350 run is still going with that one that we have at Scottsdale. And the estimate, I believe, is 350 to 400, which they typically trade in. So it'll be interesting to see if that holds true. The other one, which caught me by surprise at Elkhart, and we have another one coming up at this auction, is the 2011 Tesla Roadster. If you remember at Elkhart, that one actually doubled the estimate, which blew my mind because I thought the estimate was strong. I want to say it was $75,000 to $90,000, and it sold for like $120,000 or something. Any comments on the emerging trend of the hybrid cars coming into the collector car marketplace?
Yeah, it's something I'm not scared of or shy away from. I think electrification from a technology point of view simply is a better engineering solution to internal combustion with the access to torque. And, it's clearly coming. It's not something we should be afraid of. When done properly, like the Tesla Roadster, the market reflected that, and it sold very well. As you said, I was equally surprised. I remember a client called me pre-sale Elkhart being interested in it and having a bunch of questions, and I was kind of scratching my head about it. And then I thought about, what else offers that level of driving dynamics on the electric or hybrid side, and really there isn't much there. We have a couple new product lines coming out with, Pininfarina and all-electric things, but the Tesla Roadster was the first one to do it, and, I have yet to get behind the wheel and experience it myself, but from owners and people that have driven it, I hear only good things.
Right, and I remember at Elkhart, the comment that I came away with on that particular car that doubled basically the low estimate was, you got to look at it. Did it disrupt the industry? Which it did. I mean, it was a big player, kind of like the Mini Cooper or the Model T when they came out. It really, truly disrupted the industry. It's a first-gen car, and it's low mileage and in great shape. So how often do you find those things align, which will be really interesting to see that. Now, another car that I've called out before, or a group of cars I've called out before that I'm curious to see how they do, would be the early 2000s analog supercars that are still a manual shift. We do have a cool one at the auction, a 2000 Ferrari 550 Marinella, one of my favorite Ferraris of all time. Now, this one is estimate 150 to 200, and like I said, folks are looking for the analog supercars that are stick shift, and you really can put a big premium on having that manual gated shifter in there. And this is the one they have. It's red with tan interior, and it's a 6-speed, and I think the estimate is right on. It's 150 to 200. I would have said a year ago, I would have said the estimate would have been like 100 to 150, but they've really seemed to appreciate in the marketplace along with some of the other cars of the same type. What kind of trends are you seeing on those types of cars?
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, the trend lines are very positive on that. The analog drivable cars like the 550. Other examples would be the later 575, of course, then the later 599 GTBs. But, they're really great cars. Anything of that era, and even today, just look at 911Rs and GT3 Tourings, what those do in the marketplace compared to their PDK counterparts. And you'll see that's what collectors want. And the whole trend today with the global, pandemic situation is people want accessible cars that they can get them and drive. There's a limited number of events to go to, and even in normal times, you can't bring the same car to the same event every year. And people want something that they can get in and drive and experience as they should. And the, gated shift manual cars are well positioned to fill that need going forward.
Yep, I totally agree with that. And one car I'll call out just because I just think it's one of the prettiest cars ever built is the 1965 Aston Martin short chassis Volante. That is a really, really beautiful car, and our estimate's 1.5 and up. Nice to see that car showing up at the auction. Obviously, everybody correlates the DB5 with James Bond, but if you take that away, it's just a wonderful, beautiful car. So it's really nice to see that one there. One of only 37 short chassis cars. And then the last one I kind of want to bring up, I'm really curious to see how it does, is the new Ford GT. Now this car has got a lot of press. It's a beautiful car, and obviously the 2-year moratorium is over for certain, I guess all of the cars at this point because it's 2021. And we have one of the rare lightweight versions. What are you expecting when that car hits the auction block in Scottsdale?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in that, to my knowledge, it's the first lightweight example to come to, the public markets. And, it was an option that was made only available to select owners. So it wasn't something that was immediately accessible to anybody that got an allocation. Looking at the trend lines, I remember, and this is very normal for these new production cars, the first ones to come to market sell for, the highest values. And then as things trickle on the secondary market, simple supply and demand takes over and the price falls a little bit. And while that's true largely on the Ford GT, I noticed throughout last year a fairly steady value curve, still, $200,000 or $300,000 above the sticker price, in between the $750,000 and $900,000 range for final sale price. And they're holding their value well. This one, isn't just another one in different colors because of the lightweight options. And it really represents, the ultimate for domestic U.S. production supercar and technology.
Right, and it's a very beautiful color, kind of that dark Ford blue with some, I don't know if they're clear coat, but some like carbon fiber racing stripes or just black racing stripes. A very striking color. What does kill me is it only has 8.2 miles on it. So if that were my car, I would have put a couple hundred miles on it before I were to sell it for sure. So really, really beautiful car. And I guess the last one, I think I said that was my last one, but I do want to bring up one more here. I recently read an article in Hagerty that was pretty insightful. It was mostly, I guess, the car they use as an example or Porsches, but I think it applies across the board. And they were looking at what is the value of the color of paint. And what was fascinating, and I'm referencing our yellow Ferrari Enzo here, is that when you look at the data, at least in their snapshot compared to average resale value, the number one color for resale value, or the percent above resale value, was yellow, which totally shocked me. Warmer colors actually traditionally sold better than neutral or cool colors. Do you have much insight as far as this particular Ferrari Enzo as our last car that we will review?
Yeah, it's very interesting. As you say, I was also equally, surprised to hear that. A slight caveat in that, just as an example, you'd think that yellow is more common than it is, but I recently completed a private sale on a Porsche 918 with my colleague Alexander Weaver. And while yellow in the Porsche catalog is, open to normal selection, it's not paint to sample, only 5 U.S. cars were painted in that color. and we were able to sell it for a substantial premium. So it doesn't surprise me at all that when yellow cars come available, it's usually an option that's available when new, but very, very few cars end up selecting it. And here in this case, in the Enzo, I've only ever seen one other car in the flesh in yellow. In my personal opinion, it's the best color on the Enzo because you really get to see all the lines and angles with it that get lost with darker colors. And this one in particular is a great car, known ownership from new. In my opinion, it's not so low mileage. It's a travesty where you can't drive it. And equally, it's low enough where value-wise collectors can still feel good about the car. And we set at the time, the world record for highest price ever for an online auction with a red Enzo last year. And we hope to continue the positive results we've had with the cars.
Very beautiful. I would imagine, if I were buying that kind of car for that kind of money, I don't know that I could pull the trigger on yellow, but then once you see it, you're like, oh, I should have done that. And like you said, there's a smaller pool of cars in which to come from, so it probably even skews the data a little bit in the higher direction just because there's less cars to affect the numbers. So very, very true. So one thing that's interesting about this auction is it's transitioning from being held at the Biltmore to the Auto Car Club, which I've never been there. Can you tell us a little bit about that forum?
Yeah, it's a wonderful facility. It is the premier storage facility in the area. We've moved there for a variety of different reasons, mainly being the Biltmore is not open today with the current travel situation in the hotel industry, which is unfortunate. But we're very excited to have a partner in the Auto Car Club. We've got something like 80 cars consigned to the sale. It will all be beautifully laid out there. Limited attendance. It will be the first live sale conducted in 2021. And we're very excited to kick off the auction calendar.
Right, yes. Unfortunately, it's been scaled down, Scottsdale in general, from the number of events, but I'm glad to see that we're still out there and having a live event for our customers to really get together and enjoy in a safe environment. So that's really, really great. Now, as you know, the last thing I like to do on this podcast is to play a little game I call Keep Cash and Crush. I can't recall. Did I stump you last time, or was it fairly easy? Do you recall?
I believe I was pretty immediate with my decision.
See, that's not good. I'm not doing very well. I have like 3 in a row. Last week was Gord, and he got it pretty quick. So we'll see. Let's see if I can make this a little bit harder on you. I really gotta ramp up here a little bit. All right. So because I know you're very familiar with these cars, I am picking 3 cars from the homologation collection. So the 3 cars I'm going to, oh, good. I had you pause for a second right off the bat. So that's great. All right. So the 3 cars I'm going to pick is the 1989 Mercedes 560 SEC AMG 6.0 wide body, about the longest title in the world. The next one I will pick is the 1990 BMW M3 Sport Evolution. And then the third car I'm going to pick is the 1990 Mercedes-Benz, yes, 2 Mercedes-Benz, Mercedes 190E 2.5 16 Evolution 2, another really long name. So those are the 3 cars. You have to pick one to keep forever, one to cash in, and then one to send to the crusher. So the 1989 Mercedes, the 1990 BMW, and then the 1990 Mercedes. So how are you going to pick?
Oh, this is a very difficult answer for me.
Awesome.
I'm not really sure how I can justify it, but I'll give it my best shot. I'm
All right.
Definitely going to keep the 89 Mercedes 560 AMG simply because that's such an iconic car. It's just got a presence about it. It looks like nothing else. And the famous, dual overhead cam, 6-liter AMG motor. I have to keep that one. I would say I would then cash in the Mercedes 190 Evo 2, simply because the market on those has just been tremendous, and it could raise some funds to buy something else, and they're just great cars. I don't think I could actually drive it around with that big wing. It's a little boy racer for me, but I do love the cars. And then that sadly leaves the BMW M3 Sport Evo to the crusher. And nothing against the cars. They're, probably one of the best things, to own as a driver's car. I owned a 2002 many years ago, so I get the virtues of BMW and the ultimate driving machine. But in this scenario, I don't have an extra space in the garage, so that one's got to go.
Okay. All right. Well, for our listeners, if you listened to Gord's interview a few weeks ago, he had different cars, but one car that was similar was the 89 Mercedes. He also picked that as his keep. So you have two car specialists at RM Sotheby's picking the same car to keep. So in my mind, I need to buy that car as well because something's going on with those cars. So that's great. Okay. Well, I'm glad I made it a little bit harder on you. And I know throughout this podcast, it seems like I've been saying I've never seen that car before. I've never been to that place before. One thing I have done, and for listeners, you can go to my Instagram feed to check it out, scroll through back a little bit. But I did get a ride in a 1990 BMW M3 Evo, and it was taken to Redline numerous times. So that's not something that happens every day. So that was really cool. So check that out. All right, Barney, well, thank you so much for your time today. What's the best way for our listeners to learn more about the auction?
Yeah, go to our website at rmsotheby's.com. Look at upcoming auctions. You'll find Arizona there, and you'll get all the facts and figures available. The sale takes place on January 22nd, and we'd be excited to have you participate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Barney.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Collector Car Podcast. Don't forget to give us a nice rating on iTunes and be sure to follow us on Instagram and everywhere else at the Collector Car Podcast.